phone with Dr. Thomas Sowell from the Hoover Institution, based at Stanford University in California, and we're discussing his new book, Intellectuals and Society. And Tom, in Chapter 8, you talk about intellectuals and war, repeating history. Can you just explain a little bit what you mean by repeating history?
Well, from the 1960s on, intellectuals in the United States, Britain, and other parts of the Western democracies began to repeat arguments that had been used in the 1920s and 30s, and which were disastrous in their consequences. One of these being that the way to have peace is to have disarmament. And they made it virtually impossible for the Western world to prepare militarily for the wars that were coming, such as that with Germany, Japan, and Italy.
Well, they thought peace treaties were going.
Oh yes, you signed peace treaties and especially disarmament treaties. There was even a treaty in which various nations renounced war, and there was big hoopla over that. I mean, I find it hard to believe that adult human beings could have believed such a thing. But not only were these adults, these were some of the internationally renowned intellectuals of the time, including John Dewey, Bertrand Russell, you name them. They were for this kind of stuff. Well, what that meant was that even though the leaders of the Western world, say the Prime Minister of Britain and of France, knew that the Germans were rearming in violation of treaties, they dared not say anything because the people who made armaments had been so demonized as the merchants of death and so on, that you couldn't build up the armaments needed to deter. I mean, the armaments serve two purposes. One, the most important purpose is they deter war because people realize if they attack you, they're going to get slaughtered. But even if that fails, you need to have the armaments in case they attack you anyway. You have to be able to defend yourself.
That's right. And I believe that in 1935 or 1934, that France alone could have taken Hitler out.
Oh, yes, in 1936. In fact, Hitler himself was scared to death that when he violated two treaties by sending troops into the Rhineland, that the French would attack, because the German generals had told him that if France attacks, they don't have enough to hold France off for one day.
I'll be darned, yeah. And you know, the people who had this vision of the intellectuals who had this vision of war and peace, they are actually responsible for the death of 60 or so million people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just as one small example, you not only couldn't spend money to update your equipment. So when the war actually came, both the Germans and the Japanese, for example, had battleships larger than anything in either the American or the British Navy. During the Battle of Midway, 82 Americans flew in these obsolete torpedo planes, which could barely do 100 miles an hour. The Japanese Zeros shot them out of the sky. Only 13 out of the 82 Americans came back alive.
Yeah.
And all kinds of slaughters like this occurred around the world until about 1942, before the Western side began to win any victories.
Yeah, right. And to put this in today's perspective, we have a president who says that he wants to eliminate nuclear weapons.
Hey, listen,
if there
was some way to unring the bell so that nobody would ever know how to make nuclear weapons, I'd be all for it. But the real problem with both international disarmament treaties and domestically gun laws is it's easy to disarm people who don't mean any harm. It is hard to disarm people who do.
That's right. Yeah, right. And that's what they mean when we get rid of guns. Only criminals will have guns.
Yes. Well, Britain has gotten to that point. In Britain, you can't even use toy guns to defend yourself. I mean, one guy who caught burglars and held him at gunpoint until the police arrived. When the cops got there, he told them the gun was really just a toy gun, which it was. They arrested him anyway.
Be darned. No, but that is near lunacy. And I think at least some of the motivation, at least in America, about disarming is the idea of the so-called peace dividend during the the early 1990s under the Clinton administration, where we thought that we're going to have all this money for social welfare programs instead of missiles and bombs.
Well, that was part of the reason during the 1920s and 30s as well. In fact, Chamberlain was all ready to announce a new social program when he received the word that Hitler had just taken over all of Czechoslovakia.